Welcome to the Wooper Club League Season 14 Draft Recap. It's our first one with all the DLC released. First draft of 2024 took place at the end of 23. We're here, we're ready, we're excited to talk about what happened with this exciting draft. I am IllLogic, Nate, coach of the Buffalo Boufflant. As always, I am joined by SteveChuck, coach of the Waterdeep Waba Fett.
Hey, everybody.
As well as the expert opinions and analysis of Michael, FruitTaco, coach of the Route 1 Burbs.
Oh man, expert is a strong word.
Two-time champion, my man. You can't undercut yourself like that. We value and respect the opinions of the folks here, though we do have a little bit of a different format to talk about this time. We are not in a traditional format that we would usually have, despite it being the first time that everything that we anticipate to be available is available. Steve, talk to us. What happened with the format discussions? What happened that we arrived to what we are now at season 14, and what are we doing?
This is very soon after the DLC 2 release, and as such, we did not feel we had time to adequately tier everything. So we did a kind of a little bit of a different season, get us a little more familiar with the mons, and that is doubles, specifically 6v6 doubles. We're doing a couple things with the 6v6 doubles. We're doing Terra preview, so that once the bell starts, at least you know what your opponent's Terra options are. We're also doing item clause, borrowing that from VGC, so every item can only be used once. That's a pretty big one. And then, a reasonable ban list for the format, most of the box legendaries, some mythicals that, have been previously banned are allowed, like Darkrai, which I know they're trialing in OU. We'll give him a go. And of course, we are banning some things that we feel might be too strong for doubles, like perhaps Annihilate, perhaps Commander, Dark Void, all sorts of fun abilities like that we don't want everyone to have to have an answer for, so they don't have to.
Yeah, this is kind of a very weird thing that we're doing here compared to normal, potentially. We're borrowing some elements from VGC while keeping the 6v6 doubles. A lot of stuff going on here, Michael, that makes this a very potentially difficult format for us to adjust to. I know we have some doubles experts in our group, most of which are more so familiar with VGC, but what do you make of this format? I don't know if you've been doing a lot of extensive research to help us out with this video as well. What do you make of this format? What are some things you anticipate to see that could be interesting, different, or unique in this season compared to others?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, we have 18 coaches this season, and I would really only say that 3 of them have any kind of extensive doubles experience, and like you said, it's in VGC, not necessarily 6v6. So I think it's going to be a real kind of Wild West for a couple weeks while people are figuring out what really works, what's kind of gimmicky, what actually is, good, what things their team may or may not be missing. But I think it's going to be pretty interesting. I think it's going to be a lot like a normal season just because we do have the DLC that just came out. So everyone's going to be excited to use new stuff, new moves, new mons. Some stuff for doubles is pretty relevant. Like we have expanding force now coming back and getting a bunch of distribution along with some psychic terrain setters. So that could show up a fair amount. And we've just got lots of new options that I think everyone's gonna, just kind of gravitate towards trying the new stuff first, and we'll kind of see how everyone adapts to doubles kind of second to that.
18 coaches is a lot with 11 rounds. We are shaking out with almost 200 Pokemon drafted just in the draft process, not to mention all the free agents that could be available to help fix up teams, as well as 16 coaches in the Beginners League also giving a go at doubles. So we're getting kind of a full experience here of what is happening in the doubles format. But with that said, we've got so many coaches to get through. I think we should just start off right away and hop into the draft itself. With the number 1 overall pick in the draft, it's the Seattle Steamrollers, down season last season and some up and down success in previous doubles and PGC seasons. What were they able to do with the first pick? Well, it is going to be that Tornadus Incarnate, which is just an outstanding mon, as we'll see in just a moment. They also added on the Landorus Incarnate, able to use Sheer Force, Palafin, Dragapult, Regieleki, Pelipper for that Rain Mode, Clefairy, champion from Season 9, thank you Clefairy, Kingdra, Bisharp, Tauros, Blaze Form, and Grafai. This is a very team. Lots of speed. I'm sure we'll hear from you, Steve, but what are you making of the typings and stats?
So quickly first looking at the typings, this team does have quite a few types that are kind of spammable into it with very few resists, including Dragon, Fairy, Flying, Ghost, Psychic, and Rock. Also Electric Ice, even though they do have multiple resist, they're still overall pretty effective types to use into the team. And I really want to mention Bug is not good at all into this team. Tons of resist, no weaknesses. Taking a look at the base stats, the team is very much geared towards offense. in the top 3 teams in the league in terms of their attack and speed, while being the bottom 3 in terms of HP defense and special defense. Not a lot of bulk here. Taking a look at the speed tiers, there are a couple of gaps. However, a lot of them are on the high end. There's a gap between Regieleki and Dragapult. Who would have guessed it? Even though those are 2 of the fastest mons. Gap between then Dragapult down to Tornadus, and then at the low end, a gap between Pelipper and Clefairy. Overall, though, the range from Regieleki's 200 to Clefairy's 35 is a fantastic range for the team. They may struggle against Trick Room-based opponents, and will really need to focus on preventing that from going up. Michael, how do the moves look for this team?
Yeah, so going with that speed, their priority outside of, Palafin Strong Jet Punch, especially in rain, isn't great. They have Sucker Punch on Bisharp, but not a whole lot stands out to me besides that. Hazard Game, also not great. Only Rocks with some okay setters, and Rapid Spin Aleki as their only removal there. Could be fine. However, they have amazing pivoting. 8 Mons with offensive pivot moves, as well as access to Parting Shot, is fantastic momentum for the team. 4 knockoff users with pretty decent users like Tornadus and Clefairy in kind of supportive roles. Then 5 Taunters with double Prankster gives them lots of disruption. Good access to Paralysis and Burn, but no good sleep options. As far as things that are going to be boosting up and sweeping, the big threats are Tornadus, Landorus, Palafin, and even maybe Focus Energy Kingdra, with other options like potentially Cosmic Power, Baton Pass, Clefairy, helping something clean late game. Their speed control is amazing. Prankster, Tailwind, decent spread of speed-reducing moves. However, you did mention, I would like to see a Mon that gets Trick Room. They have no Trick Room access, and it could be their Achilles heel. Having something that could remove it could be nice for them to have. They've got Follow Me on Clefairy, which isn't the best, but is pretty solid redirection. Life Dew and Heal Pulse as well coming from that. Several good Helping Hand users. Wide Guard from Pelipper. And then Dragon Cheer on Pult. It could be a fun way to also potentially boost that Kingdra. For, big doubles offense, for spread moves, the Genie signature moves, and then, potentially Surf or Muddy Water stab spam in the rain. Then you've got stuff like Heat Wave, Rock Slide, EQ, Blizzard as coverage options. So, I think not necessarily super doubles focused, but just a solid great team. What do you think, Nate?
Yeah, this team really does scream Chad to me. From these first 8 months, you can definitely see a lot of rain elements that were already coming together before the Pelipper pick. Love seeing something like Palafin in the rain, of course, the Bleak Wind Storm, be able to Swift Swim, boost up with the Kingdra, or have the Prankster Tailwind go up for Palafin in the rain. There are a lot of cool options here, but this does seem like there's a lot of redundancy with that speed. Dragapult and Regieleki are great and can set up screens, which is kind of a unique option for them too. But I'm not sure that they provide exactly what we were looking for from those couple earlier slots there in the draft. Again, potentially getting something to help out with Trick Room, be able to mix things up just a little bit. As of right now, it seems maybe a little straightforward, and I'd love to see a little more diversification from Jet on that. I like a couple of the later picks, the Bisharp, the Taurus Blaze, to spice things up a little bit there, but maybe something else to help out with that Trick Room for sure. But otherwise, this looks like a heavy offense team. Clefairy, of course, with the redirection to help his Mons just claim KO after KO after KO. This could be a very powerful, quick-paced team. Wonder how this will work out. We're going to move on to the number 2 team. And with the second overall pick, we have returning, it's the Baltimore Oriole, one of my favorite logos in the league for sure, and a couple of my favorite mons there at the top. Shout out to the Buffalo Buffaloes past couple seasons. We're just reprising the best of them. The Goldango Baxcalibur to start off, and then Clefable, Cinderace, Mandibuzz, Crocodile, Barraskewda, Slowking Galar, Gliscor, Breloom, and the Toxtricity there in the last slot. A lot of interesting options on here, Steve. What do you see about the stats and typings?
So once again, starting off with the typings, there are, again, a handful of types that are spammable into this with very few resists, including Dragon, Fire, Flying, Ghost, and Normal. Additionally, this team also has some predominant weaknesses to Fairy, Ground, and Ice, although they do have a number of resists to attempt to offset that. Looking overall at the base stats of these mons, they tend to be towards the lower end of the base stats, resulting in nothing in the top 3 overall for the league, but the team is bottom 3 in terms of their special attack and special defense. Taking a look at the speed tiers, there is a gap at the high end between Barraskewda with that top end of 136 down to the Cinderace at 119, as well as a gap from the Cinderace's 119 down to Gliscor's 95. And then at the slow speeds, again, more claps from Clefable's 60 down to Slowking Galar's 30. But overall, an excellent range from Barraskewda's 136 to Slowking's 30 with a lot of small gaps, small increments in the middle, right where it will matter. So very reasonable speed overall. Michael, what are the move pools looking like for this team?
Yeah, so starting off with priority, they have some actually really nice offensive options, with like Bax's Ice Shard, Mach Punch from Rayloom, Sucker Punch, Aqua Jet. No fake out, but they do have 3 feint users, which could be interesting in some of the games. Their hazard play is excellent, though, with everything but sticky webs on just Gliscor and then other setters besides. Court Change and Defog giving them solid removal, so looking great for hazards for them. Pretty good pivoting. Chilly Reception and 5 other mons with offensive pivots gives them plenty to work with. 4 knockoff users, including Crocodile, and lots of taunters, but only one of them being fast is a little bit awkward for them, but still fine. Fantastic status, though, with all available statuses, plus access to Spore. Only awkward one is Burn from them, and is only coming from Cinderace, who probably isn't wanting to take its time to Will-O-Wisp stuff. For boosting threats, Goldango, Baxcalibur, Cinderace, Breloom, all of those are definitely major threats, but you could see the Slowking, Gliscor, and maybe even Clefable do some boosting later in some matches, but are probably all going to be more support-focused. Speed control, they've got double Tailwind, Trick Room on Slowking, and a couple Icy Wind and Electro Web users, giving them great options for speed control. Follow Me on Clefable for redirection. Heal Pulse on both Clefable and Slowking are nice, as well as several good helping hand users. And then for their spread attackers, Goldango's Make It Rain and Toxtricity's Overdrive and Sludge Wave are going to absolutely be monstrous moves, with also EQ from Crook and Gliscor not to be underestimated at all. You see anything else here, Nate?
Yeah, I like the Goldango pick there at the beginning a lot. Make It Rain is a standout move in every sense. That move is so good. The mon is so good here. I do wonder if we could have supported that a little bit better here, especially in the first part of the draft. Tough to find anything else to help support, for example, that fire weakness that it has. Barraskewda isn't exactly the fire resist you want, and neither is Cinderace, so that seems like something you could potentially prey on a little bit there. And ground resist are a little bit lacking aside from the 2 flying types, plus Breloom. Goldango is the one that you could build around. Doesn't seem like there was quite enough there. I think this is also the start of a trend that we see with a lot of teams as well, where there are a lot of individually really cool, interesting pieces and ideas, but I'm not quite sure how they all fit together yet. I think it's going to take some smart team building from the Oricorios, but if they can get those 1 or 2 times where that they kind of figure out how these mons fit together, which could be, I think, a little more challenging than other teams, then this team could still see quite a bit of success, unlike the number 3 pick team. When you think of recent success in the Wooper Club League, you have to think of the Noctows and how good they've been recently, with one of my personal favorite drafts here too, starting off with the Iron Hands with the number 3 overall pick, following that up with Volcanion, the Vanilla Ogerpon, Mew, Porygon 2, Sylveon, Iron Jugulus, Excadrill, Hippowdon, Inteleon, and of course, the prize from our Season 9 championship, that Charjabug pick, which is pretty sweet. So you have a lot of different pieces going on here. How do they all synergize as far as typings and stats?
Looking at the typings here, there are a lot of types that are actually pretty spammable into this team. A lot of these mons don't have many compounding resistances. So types like Fairy, Fire, Flying, Ghost, Ground, Ice, Normal, and Poison all have 2 or less resistances while hitting something super effective. Really spammable moves, especially from stab attackers. However, the weaknesses are kind of balanced out there, and there aren't any exceptionally good matchups outside of things already covered by that. So nothing else that has a lot of weaknesses and resistances. Taking a look at their base stats, they are top 3 in terms of HP, really helped out by that Iron Hands, of course, at the top there. Looking at their speed tiers, they do have 1 gap in the middle, right kind of in that prime area for Tailwind users, between Excadrill's 88 and Volcanion 70. But otherwise, they have a very good range from Inteleon's 120 to Charjabug's 36. And overall, are looking pretty good. Michael, what do the move pools look like?
Yeah, so they have a fair amount of priority, but no particularly strong options on their team. They do have Iron Hands being one of the best fake-out users, though, which is quite nice. For their hazard game is similarly fine, but a little awkward. They have several setters, but they're probably going to be reliant on Hippowdon and Mew for actually setting up stuff. Sticky Web from the Charjabug is nice. However, their only removal is Rapid Spin on Excadrill, so we'll see how far that gets them. They've got good pivoting, though, with 6 offensive pivots, 3 decent knockoff users, 5 taunt users, with Inteleon being nice and fast there. Their status options are somewhat limited out of the very versatile Mew. Access to Wisp, T-Wave, and Yawn on other mons, though, can get them by just fine. Their threats for really setting up are Iron Hands, Ogerpon, and Excadrill definitely being the big threats, but Mew can do whatever it wants, and Sylveon also shouldn't be underestimated, its ability to set up a Calm Mind. And then also look for that battery boost from Charjabug, either helping the Volcanion, Mew, Sylveon, or Jugulus as well, giving them that extra boost in power. Sticky Web is great for their speed control, as well as Tailwind from Mew and Jugulus. Speed reduction from Porygon and Charjabug gives them pretty decent options for speed control. Follow Me on Ogerpon is their only redirection option, but is nice to have. Pollen Puff and Life Dew and lots of other partner boosting moves from Mew is great for supporting other members, as well as several Helping Hand mons, but really only a couple good ones. Lots of Helping Hand users that are probably just being more offensive themselves. Anyway, and then for their spread attacks, standouts are, of course, Heat Wave from the Volcanion and Earthquake from Excadrill, with Sylveon's Hyper Voice and Hippowdon's EQ also being solid options. What else do you see here, Nate?
I see a couple of very distinct modes here, right? The Trick Room mode is pretty easy with the Porygon 2, being able to help facilitate things like the Iron Hands and potentially even a slow Sylveon. You also have really nice Tailwind setting from the Iron Jugulus, not to be underestimated there for sure. But I think what may be underestimated is how well those two modes can work together. Volcanion could potentially underspeed quite a few threats within Trick Room against some faster teams, while also being in a nice speed tier to be supplemented by Tailwind. So you don't even underestimate something like Iron Hands under Tailwind. Could be really interesting there too. I think there are a lot of really great pieces in here. Something that I know Chad and I at least talk about a lot is the idea of having a lot of bulky mons, especially in a meta like this, where you want to be able to tank 2 hits from something in doubles and be able to hit back and focus down something in return. I think this team does a really good job of that. This is, as I said before, one of my favorite teams in the draft, and I'm excited to see what he does with some things here like the Mew and how he may fit in something like the Sylveon as well. Could be really interesting. Let's move on to the number 4 pick. The number 4 overall pick, it's our defending champion Waterdeep Waba Fett, coached by our very own SteveChuck. Starting off with Rillaboom in the number 4 pick, and you already know he's following that up with the Heatran, the classic pair, doubling down on that with Glimmora, as well as the Sneasler. Following that up with Latios, Manaphy, Moltres Galar, Screamtail, Scrafty, Cyclizar, and Registeel. Obviously loading up on some ground weaknesses there early, Steve, but what else do we see with the typings and stats?
So looking at the typings here, one thing I noticed when looking at my team is no type is particularly spammable. I have plenty of resistances to every type, so it's just a question of what I'm actually bringing. Although, as you mentioned, I did pile on a lot of ground weaknesses, so there are some types that tend to be super effective, although I do have mons to cover that, but Fairy, Fighting, Ground, and Ice are all very reasonable. Taking a look at the base stats, the Waba Fetts are top 3 in terms of special defense, and they are bottom 3 in terms of attack. Looking at the speed tiers, there is a gap at the mid-low ends from Heatran 77 down to Scrafty's 58. But otherwise, all in a pretty reasonable range from Cyclizar's 121 to Registeel's 50. A little bit skimping out on the lower ends, may struggle in Trick Room, but we'll see how that goes. Michael, what do the move pools look like?
Yeah, so Rillaboom is, of course, giving you a great Grassy Glide priority, but it's really your only strong option. You do have 3 Fake Out users, as well as access to Feint, which is great utility there. Glimmora and your pretty good Rockers are going to be great hazard setting for you, with Mortal Spin and Rapid Spin removal, giving you pretty solid hazards. 6 pivots, including Shed Tail on Cyclizar, should give you plenty of momentum. 4 knockoff users, with Scrafty and Cyclizar being particularly nice ones, I think. Then plenty of access to taunt with fast users to boot. Solid access to Paralysis on your team. However, Heatran is your only source of burn, and it's a fine source of that, but probably would have been nice to have a little bit of extra options. Rillaboom, Sneasler, Latios, and Manaphy, and of course Moltres are probably your scariest setup options, and really all of them could absolutely tear through teams. But you do have some other options as well in that department. For your speed options, double Tailwind, but they're both from offensive mons, so it's a little awkward to use there. You do have Trick Room 2 and 2 other speed reducers, but also those speed reducers are also kind of offensive mons, so we'll see how they kind of sort out their roles in actual games. Ally Switch on Latios is your only form of redirection, but then you've got Heal Pulse from the Latios and a couple options for Helping Hand as well as coaching, I think, and the potential for double Dragon Cheer with the Latios and Cyclizar boosting each other's crits. Your spread attackers Heatran, Heatwave, and Moltres' Fiery Wrath are the ones that really come to mind, but you've got some decent sources of spread, chip, or damage after getting some boosts. Nate, what do you think?
Yeah, this is a solidly constructed team overall. I do see a lot of neat little mini cores here. The Rillaboom and Sneasler stands out. The two dragons stand out, as you said before, too. The Tailwinds, even if they're not the optimal mons to have them on, I do think still stand out. And of course, Grassy Terrain, supporting quite a few mons here, making something like Manaphy a potential nightmare to deal with. My only concern is, yes, it's difficult to find those super spammable moves, but it feels like a lot of those resistances are concentrated in a couple of mons. It feels like there's a lot of pressure on that Heatran, and if that Heatran is taken out, it could open up a few doors. But isn't that true for most other teams? If you can take care of that one-piece, the rest could potentially fall apart. And Steve, if you have enough success with some of those mini cores of 2 or 3 mons, that may not even matter anyways. This is a good team. I'll be looking for this one in the playoffs. Let's move it along then. And with the number 5 pick returning back to draft, it's the Close Combat Club, coached by John, starting off with the very strong Landorus Therian with his first round pick, following that up with Diancie, Vasculegion Male, Hydreigon, Tinkaton, Iron Moth, Politoed, Electabuzz, Hisuian Braviary, Conkeldurr, and Ludicolo. This draft felt a little bit all over the place at times, but I think it ended up coming together all right. What do you think as far as stats and typing, Steve?
Taking a look at the typing, there are, again, a handful of spammable types into the team here. Dragon, Fairy, Ghost, and Rock stand out, as well as Ground and Ice, having plenty of resist, but plenty of weaknesses to make it a delicate balance there. The team is overall bottom 3 in terms of the average defense of the Mons. Taking a look at the speed tiers, this team has no gaps. Things are pretty well spaced out all over the board. With a range from Iron Moth's 110 to Conkeldurr's 45. A little bit low on the top end, but at the same time, with Swift Swim on the Basculegion and Ludicolo, there are plenty of options for increased speed. Michael, what do the move pools look like?
Yeah, so starting off with their priority, Aqua Jet and Mach Punch are really their only strong options, but they do have 2 mons with Fake Out and 2 with Feint as interesting support options. Their hazard game is pretty okay for setters, but they're mostly going to be looking at Diancie and Tinkaton as setters. 2 Defog users and Braviary and Conkeldurr, who still gets it for some reason, is quite nice though. Decent pivoting with 5 offensive options, especially that flip turn on Basculegion being nice and strong. 4 knockoff users, but only 3 taunters. It's going to be a little bit limiting for them. For status, they've got solid access to Thunder Wave, but no burn options. Hypnosis is their only sleep, and Iron Moth is their only toxic user. Definitely a bit limited in that department. Their boosters could be Diancie, Hydreigon, Iron Moth, Braviary, and Conkeldurr being scary threats, but outside of that, Conkeldurr generally lacking in the physical setup that I would expect to see. For speed control, they've got 2 Tailwind users, an excellent Trick Room setter, and a couple good speed reducers, giving them really good speed play. They've got Follow Me on Electabuzz for some redirection. Helping Hand on Electabuzz, Politoed, and Diancie are particularly nice, I think, as is Wide Guard coming from that Conkeldurr. Their spread attackers could be Diancie having great spread moves and stuff like Gleam and Diamond Storm. Then Iron Moth's Heat Wave and Sludge Wave are good, but tricky to use on this team. And then they've got other options that could be boosted by Terra or Rain, but not a whole lot that stands out in that regard. Nate, what do you think about the team?
Yeah, this is pretty interesting. I mentioned before it kind of had to come together at the end here. I had to grab the Politoed there before that one after Pelipper went to Chad. But I really like the rain mode on this team, actually. It's definitely different compared to what the previous rain team did. You see Ludicolo and Basculegion obviously stand out there with Swift Swim, but they have a lot of other options. Even without Last Respect, I think the Basculegion still does have the ability to put in a lot of work. It does have the ability adaptability, which is kind of neat. Ludicolo has a lot going for it in terms of supports. Those both can function outside of rain. We see a couple of Hurricane mons, too, with the Hisuian Braviary able to function with Hurricane in and out of the rain. And we also see a couple different modes come together, right? I love the Conkeldurr pick at the end for the rock resist, plus being able to actually abuse the Trick Room from one of the best Trick Room setters we have in Diancie, being able to take care of that. So it felt like John went for a lot of just very good mons at the very beginning, and then was able to round it out by the end with a lot of the complementary picks. Shout out to Electabuzz, too. Just fills in so many different holes. Definitely a popular mon in this league in doubles as well after the previous time whenever Joey was able to use it well. And with some more doubles experience than most teams, I think this could be a sleeper pick. Close Combat Club looking pretty good. Let's move it along. And with the number 6 pick, we move on to those very same Agron Agrons referenced just a little bit earlier, coached by Joey, who was able to snag Incineroar with the number 6 pick. Come on, that shapes doubles OU, but with only one user, maybe we see a few different things open up. Able to follow that up with a couple of different interesting cores here. The Ogerpon Cornerstone going with his second pick, followed by Cresselia, Tyranitar, Enamorous, Therian, Deoxys Speed, Indeedee Male, Meloetta, Houndstone, Weezing, and Cobalion. See a lot of the same types here, Steve. Does that reflect poorly on his overall typings and stats?
Yes, it does. This team has a lot of spammable attacks into it. Electric, fairy, fire, flying, ground, ice, rock, steel, water. Very notable about water is there are no resists on this team for water. A couple super effectives, and it's really looking good at the moment. In addition to all those spammable types, Bug, Dark, and Fighting also have a lot of really good matchups against this team, but also their resists. So a very polarizing type matchup here. Taking a look at the base stats, this team is fairly average. There is nothing in the top or bottom for any of the base stats. Looking at the speeds, there is a gap between Deoxys Speed and Ogerpon Cornerstone. Really hard to believe there that he couldn't close that gap between Deoxys and anything else. Also a gap between Cresselia's 85 down to Houndstone 68. But overall, the range from Deoxys Speed's 180 to Enamorous Therian's 46 is pretty good. Might be a little bit slow at the top end outside of the Deoxys, but lots of stuff in the middle that could really benefit from speed boosting elements. Michael, what do the move pools look like?
Yeah, so they don't have any great priority options. They do have double fake out, but of course they do have psychic terrain, which could mitigate that flaw. They might not have been able to use it anyway. For their hazards, they have okay setting options, but mostly on offensive pieces, and no removal could be awkward hazards for them this season. Only 4 pivots, but Incin is a fantastic one. Good knock-off users with the T-Tar and Incin, as well as 2 others, and then 6 Taunters is pretty good for their disruption. Good access to Paralysis and Burn, and Weezing is a very good Toxic Mon. Their Tyranitar and Enamorous are definitely the biggest threats as far as setting up for sweeps, but Meloetta and Cobalion are also potential sweepers. Their speed control involves several Trick Room setters, but only Tailwind on the Enamorous could be kind of awkward there. Cresselia is also their only good speed reducer with Icy Wind, so not the best there. They have Ally Switch on Cresselia and Houndstone for some okay redirection. Then they've got Lunar Blessing to heal their ally with that Cresselia. Great helping hand users, and even several potential coaching users on this team could be very interesting. For their spread attackers, Enamorous's Gleam and T-Tar's Rock Slide are definitely strong, with Hyper Voice on Meloetta and Indeedee, who also has Expanding Force, as other great options. Nate, what do you see here?
I see a lot of things all over the place. I think Steve put it pretty well without really making a statement there. He just kind of said there are no water resists on the team, and if you see a lot of different spots where that definitely could have come up. I guess the positives, I love the Incineroar. I love what is actually constructed with Sand here. When Sand, you think, oh, you're just doubling up on a ton of different weaknesses, but actually T-Tar, Ogerpon, plus the Enamorous, who is immune to Sand with Overcoat, plus the Houndstone, that's actually really cool there. But then I see things like the Indeedee, and I'm really not quite sure how that is going to be taken advantage of. I see one of the best Trick Room setters in Cresselia. I'm not really 100% sure on how that's going to be taken advantage of. I see Weezing with some really cool options. I see double Intimidate potentially with being able to switch in and out and proccing Intimidate. But others, I'm not really sure how well that's going to work out. And there are some big threat strategies that we see that are going to be very difficult to deal with. We saw multiple rain teams already in just the first couple of drafts that we've gone over. And I don't see the best way to combat that. Sure, you can put up Sand once, maybe twice with the neutralizing gas, but you're not really able to do much into that offensively. I think it will take a little bit of maneuvering around, maybe a couple of trades to fix things up. I see the beginnings of a couple of different cores here, but I'm not sure that they work that well together. I think it would be better to stick with one of them and get some better value picks elsewhere. But knowing the Agrons, I'm sure they'll have a very successful regular season nonetheless. Let's move on. With the number 7 pick, making their debut in the main league, it's Brandon and his Pikeville Pups. Shout out to the jungle here. We see a lot of Unite options actually in here too. His first pick is the Dragonite, which is actually pretty powerful in that first round. Following that up with the Tinglu, Kudra Hisui, Wochen, oh gosh, that's gross. Hoopa, Iron Leaves, Zarude, Clodsire, Blissey, Slowbro, and Lucario. Steve, I just see a ton of bulk on this team. We're not 100% sure with doubles, wonder how that'll work, but how does that reflect in terms of the stats as well as typings?
Yeah, the typings of this team are not terrible here. There are some spammable types: Dragon, Fairy, Fire, Flying, Ice, as well as some predominant weaknesses to Bug, Dark, Fighting, and Ghost. I really want to highlight that Bug again with Wo-Chien, Iron Leaves, and Zarude all having a quad weakness, so something to really try and take advantage of against this team. But as mentioned, taking a look at the stats, they are top 3 in terms of HP and special defense, with an average special defense I want to shout out of 108, way above everyone else. This is a very, very bulky team, especially with Lucario being the lowest at 70, and outside of that, a couple 80s. Very specially bulky. They are, however, bottom 3 in terms of speed, which with a double Trick Room format could be a good thing instead of a bad thing. In terms of their speed tiers, there are no gaps. They are pretty well spaced out from their high end of Zarude's 105 to Clodzire's 20. They do have some slow mons to take advantage of Trick Room. However, outside of Trick Room, I'm not entirely sure how they're going to manage. They're definitely going to need some sort of speed support. Otherwise, they will just be hit first and hopefully live based on their incredible bulk. Michael, what did the move pools look like?
Yeah, so to help with that speed a little bit, Dragonite and Lucario have good priority options, but that's kind of all they're looking at. They do have 2 Feint users, which is interesting. They have, between that Tinglu and Clodsire, the amazing hazard setting, but absolutely no removal could be a way to get through all of that bulk. They also have terrible pivoting, with U-turn on Zarude being really their only great pivot option. Knock Off and Taunt, though, they have good access to Taunt and some good knock-off users with Zarude and Wo-Chien, and then 2 other knock-off users. No access to Burn for their statuses, but okay or good access to the other statuses. For boosting, they've got Dragonite, Lucario, Iron Leaves, and Zarude probably being the ones to watch out for, especially that Dragonite and that Lucario. Their speed control is okay, not great. They have 2 Trick Room setters, which could be great for them. Only Tailwind option for them is the D-Knight, which could be awkward. They have 2 other speed reducers, but as Steve alluded to, Trick Room probably would be their preferred setting anyways. They have 2 ally switch mons, giving them some redirection. And then they have insane partner support. They have so much partner healing. They've got Pollen Puff, 3 heal pulsers, tons of life dew across the team, as well as great helping hand users, means they're going to be able to support and keep each other alive obnoxiously. Their spread attacking is pretty lackluster, though, mostly just coverage options from strong mons like Dragonite. Nate, give us something here.
Man, this team is thick, isn't it? It seems so difficult to try to break through any one piece of this, and whenever you do break through that, something else is going to come in that's just as thick and tanky, not to mention some of the actual offensive options. I love the Dragonite to be able to kind of give a mixture of both there. The Zarude provides some interesting options there too. But I do agree there do appear to be some spammable options into the team, so it's not necessarily all doom and gloom there. Additionally, it seems a little bit weak to some setup options aside from potentially the Clodsire there with Unaware, making sure that they don't see that happening. If this team ends up playing too passively, I do worry about something being able to set up and quote unquote sweep. It's obviously much tougher to sweep in doubles whenever you have 2 mons that can target that slot down. But a missed turn or here or there could be absolutely brutal. Try to heal up your partner, and in the meantime, your opponent does something that you just cannot recover from because it sets them up for multiple turns. That seems a little bit tough to play with. Defense is, of course, just a tough play style in general in doubles. But hey, it's Tinglu and Wo-Chien. Imagine trying to break through those 2 together, especially if you don't have the right options there. There's a lot of potential with this team. I wonder what he'll be able to do with it. This could be a fun one to watch, though maybe not to play against. Let's move along. With the number 8 pick, it's Joe and the Boulder Bulldors coming back, and starting off with the Raging Bolt mon that I think has made a lot of waves in Pokemon recently since its release. We're all looking at a couple other mons, but Raging Bolt really coming through. We're pairing that up with the Ninetales Alola, the Serena, Monkey Dory, Zapdos Galar, Suicune, Meowscarada, Comfey, Bronzong, Mamoswine, and Talonflame. A lot of diverse options here, Steve. What are we looking at as far as stats and typings go?
So this team, like many others, has a couple of spammable types: Flying, Ghost, Normal, Psychic, Rock, all pretty spammable into this team with a few resists. Um, in addition to that, Fire, Ice, Poison, and Steel are also pretty good, all having their good matchups and bad. Taking a look at the base stats, they are top 3 overall in terms of speed, with 6 mons at or above base 100. Really fast team here. However, they are bottom 3 in terms of their attack and their special attack. Going to really rely on some additional aspects to boost up their offenses to break through their opponents. On their speed, they do have a single gap on the slow end from Serena's 72 down to Bronzong's 33. Overall, a range of from Talonflame's 126 to Bronzong's 33. Looking pretty good. Bronzong's really their only Trick Room option, but it also has the ability to turn around Trick Room. So really good there, trying to keep it with their impressive speed. Michael, what do the move pools look like?
And so their priority options are really strong. They've got that Stab Thunderclap from Raging Bolt, Ice Shard from Mammo, Sucker Punch from Meowscarada, as well as access to Fake Out and Feint, giving them some pretty nice priority options. Their hazards, they have rocks on Mammo and Bronzong and spikes from Meowscarada, but probably going to be a little bit limiting in actually getting those on the field. Rapid Spin, Serena, and Defog on Talon are excellent removal options, though. They've got good pivoting with 7 offensive pivots as well as access to Parting Shot, giving them plenty of momentum. Lot of good knockoff users, especially want to call out that Meowscarada getting nice and powerful stab on it, and 7 taunt users with several fast ones gives them plenty of disruption. Access to all status options, but basically each status is really only on 1 mon each, so they've got the status, but not great access to it. For boosting, standouts are definitely going to be Raging Bolt, Zapdos, and even Monkey Dory with Mamoswine, Suicune, and Alolan Ninetales definitely not to be overlooked in that department either. For Tailwind users, access to Trick Room and Stab, Electro Web, and Icy Wind give them excellent speed play. However, their only ally switch is Meowscarada, which isn't great. They do have double Pollen Puff on this team for healing, as well as lots of helping hand users with several particularly excellent ones. Their spread attacking also kind of lacking, but A9 with the Blizzard in the Hail as well as Gleam and Mamoswine's Earthquake are definitely scary, and they have some other options like Heatwave, Talonflame, and Rock Slide as backup spread options there. Nate, what do you think of the team?
I think there are a lot of very cool options in here. I'd love to see what some of these ones are going to do. Maybe the first time we see them, like the Raging Bolt, Monkey Dory. But what really sticks out to me is what Steve said earlier, that this team is bottom 3 in both attack and special attack. If we know the Boulders gameplay, they like to have 1 or 2 gimmicks in their team that they will rely on to make things happen. If those get disrupted, I do worry about what will happen there. For example, we see may see some calcs that are trying to live behind an Alola Ninetales dual screen setup. What happens whenever that suddenly goes down? I wonder if there will be enough on this team to be able to help get that backup option up and going when there isn't enough regular firepower. You need to see some smart use of setup as well as some choice items probably to get that power out of here, because there are a lot of other really cool options that are already in here. Left hand having the Serena support just by its passive ability, a lot of what Comfey can do priority wise. If you can help actually get the support off properly into those mods, I think you can help make up for lack of that power. This could be a really fun team to watch. Again, just hope it doesn't all have to rely too much on 1 or 2 options. Let's move on to finish up the first half of the draft. With the number 9 overall pick, it's Matt Cincinnati Incineroar, and boy, he must have actually been watching doubles way before us. And he is actually one of our only doubles players. We see the Indeedee female and Iron Crown picked up. Sure enough, a day or 2 after that happened, that's when all these YouTube videos end up coming out about Indeedee Iron Crown. I wonder who was helping out on the forefront of that. He's going to follow that up with the Komodo, Arcelina Blood Moon, Craterini, Glastray, Horse Spotting, Superior, Corviknight, Empoleon, Typhlosion, and of course, the Illumise. What other format are you going to see Illumise be a serious pick in? Doubles is pretty cool. All right, Steve, what are we looking at as far as stats and typings go?
The typing here are pretty reasonable. There are a couple spammable types in Dark, Fighting, Fire, and Ghost. But outside of that, nothing else is really super effective into the team. They have plenty of resistances to offset their other weaknesses. Taking a look at the base stats, they are top 3 in terms of their defense and their special attack, and bottom 3 in terms of their attack and speed. They're definitely going to want to take advantage of Trick Room here, and with the Psychic Terrain and Iron Crown with Expanding Force, really strong Trick Room mode that we will love to see. For the speed tiers, there is 1 gap between the Ursaluna Blood Moon's 52 to Glastree's 30. A little bit gap on the slow side, but that won't particularly matter. Overall, the range from Superior's 113 to Hatterene's 29 really does emphasize that this is a Trick Room team. Very common combination of the Trick Room and Psychic Terrain. Really hoping to see it work out well for Matt. Michael, what do the move pools look like?
Yeah, so that Psychic Terrain is going to negate any strong priority they have, but they do have Fake Out and some strong Vacuum Wave options among others, giving them some options when that terrain is not out. Their hazard game is pretty poor, setting with just Rocks on Komodo and Empoleon. However, they do have Defog on Corviknight as potentially reliable removal. Pivoting, they only have 4 pivots outside of Baton Pass, but we could see mons like Indeedee and Hatterene passing some boosts potentially. For Knockoff and Taunt, they've got 2 Knockoff users and 5 Taunters, but none of them are particularly fast. They have great access to Paralysis, including Glare, but pretty limited otherwise to stuff like Yawn and Will-O-Wisp on the Typhlosion. For their boosting, though, they've got tons of scary sweepers here with Indeedee, Iron Crown, Ursaluna, Komodo, Glastrier, Superior, and, of course, competitive on that Empoleon, being lots of interesting options to set up and start sweeping games. For speed control, they have great Trick Room setters, and Prankster Tailwind are nice, but not a whole lot to work with outside of that. Follow Me on Indeedee is nice redirection. They've got Heal Pulse on both that Indeedee and Hatterene for some healing, and good access to Helping Hand as well. Spread attacking, they've got that devastating expanding force from Hatterene and Iron Crown being terrifying. Hyper Voice, Ursaluna, Eruption Typhlosion, Clanging Scales on Komodo, all of those should be watched out for too. I think this is a pretty scary team. What about you, Nate?
I totally agree, yes. And while I've mentioned multiple cores before, I think these all just work together so incredibly well. I mentioned what Psychic Terrain here goes with. It goes with another good of Trick Room setters here with Hatterene, and what is here to back up Hatterene, it's things like Ursaluna Blood Moon and Glastrier, which are amazing. Oh, and by the way, if you really wanted to fit underneath the Psychic Terrain and take advantage of no priority in a different way, you also have the Illumise. Yeah, I think this may actually come to multiple matches, which is really funny there too. If there's any weakness here, I wonder what exactly it was looking at with the Corviknight, Empoleon, Typhlosion picks, kind of that area. Don't seem that good standalone, don't seem to fit in that well with these already established strategies, but I really do trust Matt and his knowledge of doubles and VGC to be able to carry him there too. I could see some fun things with them underneath Tailwind, or be able to set up themselves as well. This looks like legitimately one of the best teams. You have to prepare for so many different potential cores and some that may just not come. This is maybe the scariest team we've seen yet, and good luck to Matt and anybody who has to face him this season. Let's move on to the second half of the draft. With the number 10 overall pick, we have the Kanto Kinglers going 10th in the draft here. Starting off here, which actually was a Chen Pao here. We'll talk about that in a moment. Chen Pao into Archaludon, Armarouge, Jolteon, Electivire, Grimmsnarl, Minior, Salamence. You see at the end there, it's the Sun Core, the Ninetales, Leafeon, Charizard, from which a trade was born. And during the draft, we're able to trade for that Walking Wake to help that out quite a bit. Now, Sun Team's a little bit infamous for having a lot of overlapping types, Steve. Does this team fall victim to that as well? And tell us about their stats, too.
Yeah, there are a couple spammable types into the team, but not necessarily the ones that are typically good into a Sun team. Dark, Dragon, Ghost, Ice, Poison, and Rock all seem pretty spammable into the team in general. While Water is also good, although it has Planar Resist, plus the Sun to weaken its power. Taking a look at the base stats, the team is top 3 in terms of their special attack and speed, really favoring that special offense and fast offense. Bottom 3 in terms of special defense, a little bit lacking there, but overall, no issues. The speed tiers, there are no gaps. They have very even spacing throughout. Their range from Jolteon's 130 down to Grimmsnarl's 60. Their low end, of course, is not very well defined, and even at the bottom end, it's a little sparse up to the 60, and then Armarouge is 75. So really going to try and prevent that Trick Room from going up and use their Sun offense to decimate their opponents. Michael, what do the move pools look like?
Yeah, so the priority options are pretty limited. Grimmsnarl has a decently strong Sucker Punch, but nothing else really stands out. They do have Fake Out and Feint, though, which is nice. Pretty poor hazard setting with just Rocks on that Archaludon and Minior, and no removal options. Okay, but not great pivoting as well. They've got Jolteon, Electivire, Minior, Walking Wake, and Grimmsnarl offering some pretty solid options. Knockoff and Taunt, they have 3 okay knockoff users, and then limited taunt users, but Grimmsnarl is, does have that Prankster taunt being pretty nice. Great access to Paralysis and Burn on this team. For boosting options, Walking Wake in Sun, of course, is scary. That Archaludon with its signature move, potentially boosting special attack. Armarouge, of course, Minior, Salamence, lots of good potential sweepers on this team. For speed control, Mence and Armor Rouge are their only access to Tailwind and Trick Room respectively, and with just 2 Electro Webbers otherwise, the team doesn't have that much speed control. Redirection, they do have Follow Me on Electivire and Ally Switch on Armor Rouge. 4 Dragon Cheer users on this team could definitely make something interesting happen there, getting crits galore on some of these Pokemon. Then they also have several solid Helping Hand users. For their spread attacks, Heat Wave from any of the fire types and Minior Rock Slide, especially after something like a Shell Smash, are definitely the ones to watch out for, but do watch out for the potentially very funny Jolteon and Electivire double discharge spam being very funny. Nate, what do you think?
I do agree that that is very funny. If I have to say more, I would say that those mons probably would have been available a little bit later. Wish the Sun Core had come together a little bit earlier too. Would have loved to see Walking Wake pair with, say, Torkoal. The Charizard I do really like there. Would have loved to see a couple more Photosynthesis mons. Shout out to your team last season here, Michael. The Sun Core, I think, could have been a little bit more. I think if we had been able to foresee that, use the picks earlier to be able to get something together there, then it may have worked out a little bit better. But as it is, a lot of those early picks, I don't really see too much synergy there together, aside from the double discharge spam. That is really funny. There are some individually cool pieces here. Armor Rouge, of course, very cool. We see what Steve was able to with it last season, but I don't see any Psychic Terrain really to be able to help abuse that. The Grimmsnarl is really nice and kind of a necessary piece with all the Dragonmons on there, but aside from putting up screens, I don't know if you're going to be able to take well enough advantage of those screens. It's kind of a discount of Alola Ninetales when paired with the regular Ninetales to be able to get the screens up with Sun potentially, I guess. I'm not sure everything's going to come together here properly, but if we know Michael and his Kinglers, I do anticipate some very fun strategies that I think will work out at least a couple of times. And whenever they do, we're all going to be cheering for that because it's going to be so freaking funny. With that, let's move on to the next pick. With the number 11 pick, look at that. It's everybody's favorite team, the Buffalo Bouffant, my very own team here. We got to start off with the powerful pick, the Chi-Yu Goldfish Power to start off with. Pairing that up with the Shaman Skyform, Hoopa Unbound, a lot of different forms here. The Ursa Luna, Keldeo, Gyarados, Iron Treads, Rotom Wash, Hariyama, Gothitelle, and Moltres. Steve, a lot of unique mons on here, potentially. How do they fit together as far as stats and typings go?
Taking a look first at typings, once again, there are a handful of spammable types into the team. Dragon, Electric, Fairy, Flying, Normal, all very reasonable to hit a lot of these mons. Rock also looks good despite plenty of resists. There are plenty of weaknesses to offset that. Overall, in terms of the base stats, this team is very offensive. Top 3 in terms of attack, top 3 in terms of special attack. Pair that, of course, with Chi-Yu's Beads of Ruin. Lots of offense that can be put out. The speed tiers, there is a single gap at the high end from Shaman Sky's 127 down to Keldeo's 108. But otherwise, a fairly uninterrupted run from Shaman Sky's 127 down to Ursa Luna and Hariyama's 50. Overall, it looks like a solid teams in terms of their stats and typing. Michael, how do the move pools look?
Yeah, so starting off with that priority options, pretty limited. Decent priority from Keldeo and Hariyama. They do have double Fake Out and 1 Faint user, which is pretty nice for them. They have pretty bad hazard game, with Rocks and Rapid Spin on Iron Treads being their entire hazard game. Just 3 pivots is also kind of rough for the team, although Keldeo and Iron Treads are pretty good ones. 2 good knockoff users, but that's it. They do have good access to Taunt, but not on particularly fast mons. For status, they don't have any particularly diverse or deep options, but they have okay access to Paralysis and Burn. For their boosting options, Chi-Yu, Ursa Luna, Keldeo, and Gyarados are definitely the big sweepers to watch out for, but Hariyama and Gothitelle are also options people should keep eyes on. For speed control, they have access to Tailwind and Trick Room, but not a lot else, and however, they don't have any redirection, which is unfortunate for the Bouffant. For supporting their partners, Heal Pulse on Gothitelle and Helping Hand on a couple mons are pretty nice, and then they have Wide Guard and Coaching on Hariyama, which could turn out to be quite good as well. Spread attacking, they have Chi-Yu, of course, firing off Heat Wave, and Ursa Luna throwing off massive Earthquakes, with some good other options like Keldeo's Muddy Water and some Rock Slide users. Nate, you pretty happy with what you walked away with here?
Overall, I think so, yes. Definitely the first 3 picks altogether, I think, make a good bit of sense, right? Help play off of the Beads of Ruin, as well as just some ones you don't really get to see very often. From there, I see a lot of very good ones, but as you went through in your descriptions too, I wonder if there's enough there to help out in the doubles format in particular. A couple of cute options here or there. I do really like the Hariyama and Gothtel pickups at the end to kind of add a couple of new different dimensions to the team. Everyone have fun playing around Gothtel. I finally did. I've been threatening it for seasons. Here's the Trapper. But I do wonder again if there's enough here to help out in a doubles format with the Mons being this good individually. Hope so. Hope that'll carry me a little bit here, but we'll see if I can actually get them all to work together against these other very high level strategies that we've seen that are in their own cores here in doubles. Wonder if these will be able to keep up. That said, let's move along. With the number 12 overall pick, we have Greg's Calgary Corviknight making a comeback here after a very successful season last time around. We're starting off with the Ogre Pond Hearthflame, pairing that with, yep, there's the other Sun team. It's Torkoal, pairing that up with Brute Bonnet, Toxapex, Sandy Shocks, another Photosynthesis Mon, Garkanackle, Lilligan, Tisui, Articuno, Galar, Klefki, Duraludon, and Noivern. This is a pretty powerful team here, too. We see the Sun Core there, Steve. Is this team also impacted by the typings? And what do you think about the stat spread?
This team, a little more than the other, is in fact impacted by the typings, maybe because they have a lot more of the fire and grass types. Although in terms of spammable types, it is just Dragon and Ghost. They do then have overall weaknesses to flying, ground, and rock, but a ton of resistances to compound with those and make those types, a little bit harder to use. The team overall is top 3 in terms of their defense, while being bottom 3 in terms of their HP and special attack. Looking at the speed tiers, there are a couple gaps on the low end, from Klefki 75 to Brute Bonnet's 55, and then from Brute Bonnet down to Toxapex and Garganackle, both at 35. Overall, the range from Noivern's 123 to Torkoal's 20 is pretty reasonable. We'll definitely want to use the Sun as best they can, and those Prosynthesis boost and Chlorophyll boost to offset some of the middling speeds at times, but really looking like a strong team. Michael, what do the move pools look like?
Yeah, so they have pretty bad priority with not much besides Brute Bonnet, Sucker Punch, which is pretty strong. Their hazard game is great though, with a huge diversity of hazards and setters, as well as Rapid Spin and 2 Defoggers, giving them insane hazard play. For pivoting, 3 good pivot mons, but that's about it, not giving them a lot of momentum. No knockoff and only 2 taunt users is also pretty bad disruption for the team. They do have great access and diversity of status options though, including Spore. However, they're pretty limited on their burn options. Boosting Ogre Pond, of course, when it terastallizes, gets an attack boost right away, as well as other setup options. Brute Bonnet in the Sun with growth, Lilligant, Articuno, all of them are potentially quite scary. Speed control, they only have 2 speed reducers, but double Tailwind and access to Trick Room is pretty solid. Brute Bonnet is bringing some redirection in Rage Powder. They then have, for supporting their partners, double Pollen Puff, good helping hand users, Wide Guard, double Dragon Cheer, and I believe Lilligant gets After You. Very fun move there. Their spread attacking, though, no real standout spread attackers outside of Terra, although Torkoal and Sun definitely shouldn't be underestimated. What do you make of this second Sun team here, Nate?
Well, those last couple things you mentioned there, the After You plus Torkoal really does stand out there as a nice combo. Chlorophyll, Lilligant, After You into Torkoal. Ooh, that's some damage right there for sure. Damage does seem to be the name of that game there with Under the Sun. There are a couple of other interesting options in here. It seems like Trick Room is a little bit limited on this team, but I also don't really mind it that much. Yes, Torkoal is a great abuser, but other mons like Toxapex and Garkanachi, pretty good under Trick Room. Don't necessarily need it to be set. These feel like just very good mons that are kind of Trick Room deterrents, which I do actually really like about the team here too. I do like the steel types being in there to help out with a lot of the spammability potential threats that were mentioned previously on Sun teams. This seems pretty solid overall. It seems like it's something that could potentially be overcome, but it seems like it's more on the opponent to figure out how to overcome that, which if you go one step further, if this team can figure out the easy ways to counter this and counter those appropriately, then I think Greg could have a very successful season. That seems potentially a bit overcomplicated to say something very simple, but if Greg can just stay one step ahead with a team that looks somewhat straightforward, which I think he can do and prove to us he can last season, this could be another successful one for him. Let's move along to the next pick. And with number 13 pick, the slightly rebranded Wooper Boopers, picking up the Gouging Fire with that 13th overall pick. Following that up with Primarina, Metagross, Great Tusk, Tornadus Therian, Necrozma, Arbalava, Hitmontop, Vikavolt, Alolan Muck, and Dusclops. See a lot of traditionally pretty darn good mons within doubles in here, Steve. How do they work together as far as typings and stats are concerned?
First, looking at typings, there are many spammable moves into this team with not a lot of resist to Dragon, Fairy, Fire, Flying, Ghost, Ground, Ice, and Water. However, they don't have any additional moves that are good into them with a very diverse set of types, allowing for no real stacking up of weaknesses. Taking a look at the base stats, the team is top 3 in terms of defense and bottom 3 in terms of speed. Looking a little bit further at the speed, there is a gap between Tornadus Therian's 121 down to Gouging Fire's 21. But otherwise, that's the only gap from their entire range of Tornadus Therian's 121 down to Dusclops 25. Definitely a team on the slower side with only one mon over base 100. We'll definitely need to utilize Trick Room effectively or Tailwind support to really get the exceptional use out of these mons. Michael, what do the move pools look like?
Yeah, so they have some pretty good priority attackers, with Hitmontop in particular providing lots of options, including Fake Out and Feint. Their hazard game, they have great rock options, as well as Sticky Web, and then 2 rapid spinners for great removal while keeping those webs around. Only 2 particularly nice, 3 nice pivots in Primarina, Tornadus, and Vikavolt, which is enough to work for, but you could want more. Good access to knock off, including strong ones from Alolan Muck. Some decent taunters, but not a particularly deep or fast selection of them. Solid burn options as far as status goes, but kind of limited in options for other statuses. Their boosting mons could be Primarina, Gouging Fire, Necrozma, and Great Tusk, definitely I think being the most notable, with Muck and Metagross as potential additional options. No Tailwind on this team, but Trick Room and good options for lowering speed, including that Sticky Web. No redirection, however they do have Pollen Puff and Life Dew for healing partners, as well as good helping hand access, wide guard, and coaching. Their spread attackers Primarina and Great Tusk are by far the best ones, with Arboliva's Hyper Voice also being good too, though. I think this is a little bit unconventional from what I was expecting people to draft, but I think it's pretty good. What about you, Nate?
Yeah, I think this is another case of the individual mons here feel really good and interesting, but together they feel a little bit, I don't know, kind of samey almost. I see a lot of mons in those kind of middle speed tiers there that would really love consistent Tailwind or Trick Room support that you really don't have. You have a couple of options for things like Sticky Web and Trick Room there at the end of the draft. I don't know if they can come every single time, though these are a lot of mons that fit that traditional mold that we like to see of bulky mons that could potentially take a couple hits and KO something back. I don't know if they're that bulky or that strong individually. Together, I hope they can all come together a little bit, but that seems a little bit tough. It seems like you're going to need some smart play around some things like Necrozma and Tornadus Therian to help bring everything together here. I'm not sure I'm 100% a believer in the team. Maybe 1 or 2 transactions could help this out. But if it does end up clicking, again, the individual pieces look really fun and interesting. I think they could potentially work out. Excited to see what the Boopers can come up with to make this function. Let's move along. With the number 14 overall pick, there it is. It's the Route 1 Burps coach by our very own Michael. Shout out to bot lane. And he's going to start off with the Ogre Pond Wellspring pick, following that up with King Gambit, Volcarona, Thunderous Therian, Terrakion, Latias, Weezing, Milotic, Reuniclus, Weefile, and Toadscroll. Now, I know you just barely missed out on the Mousehold pick, but what kind of impact did that have on the stats and typing, Steve?
Taking a look at the typing for the team, there are a couple spammable options: Dragon, Fire, Flying, Ghost, Psychic, and Rock. All look pretty spammable into the team, with nothing else really standing out as an exceptional attack type. In terms of the stats, the team is top 3 in terms of their special defense, with speed tiers being a little bit all over the place. There's a gap between Volcarona and Toadscroll's 100 down to Milotic's 81. There's a gap between Milotic's 81 down to Weezinglar's 60, a gap from King Gambit's 50 down to Reuniclus's 30. But that's it in the range from Weevile's 125 to 30. Overall, reasonable speed range, but we're going to need some more in the move pools to make up for that. How's it look, Michael?
Yeah, so making up for that priority, I have bad news. I've got solid options from Weavile and King Gambit, but that's pretty much it. My hazard game, I have decent spike setting with rocks, but not great rockers. Defog and Rapid Spin are good removal for me though. Pivoting, also pretty bad pivoting, with really only Volcarona and Milotic as solid pivots. Knockoff and Taunt, Weavile's a good knockoff user, and then I have 2 other okay ones, and pretty good Taunt access. I do have excellent status, though, with multiple options for all statuses, including Spore. Boosting options include Kingambit, Volcarona, Latias, and Terrakion, all being great with Weavile and Reuniclus as additional options. Speed control, I have 2 Tailwind users, Trick Room, and 2 solid Icy Windmons, making for good but not great speed play. I do have fantastic redirection, though, with Follow Me, 2 Rage Powder users, and Ally Switch being excellent redirection. For my partner support, I have Heal Pulse and Life Dew with some good Helping Hand users, but not a ton else in that bag of tricks. Then for spread attacking, Terrakion and Volcarona are definitely the scariest, with Wheezing and Milotic providing some decent spread chip damage. What do you think of my team here, Nate?
Maybe it's my singles brain here. It feels similar to the previous team, but I guess I like a lot of the individual options here a lot more. I think it's those slightly higher speed tiers from things like the Thundurus and the Ogerpon that really draw me to it. Plus, a lot of what you said with the redirection options, things like Volcarona and Toadscroll being able to help out a little bit and provide some of that. I like the support options a lot too. If there's something interesting for me, I do actually really like Reuniclus as a mon here in doubles. But I'm not sure there's the most you can do to help take advantage of that. Kingambit obviously has the low speed to function underneath Trick Room, but it doesn't necessarily need that because as it functions anyways, you should just be winning the prediction game anyways. Reuniclus seems a little bit out of place, but is still a very good mon. Plus, you need something to be able to help counteract Trick Room here anyways. As bitter as I am about Wheezing Galar being taken away from me just before I was going to pick it, I think it does actually function pretty well in here too. It will help support a lot of your options. I think you are somebody that I trust to bring everything together this season. I'm interested to see some of the cool little things that you're able to make work with this team. Some things that people may not necessarily see at first, but once you put it out there, I think we'll all be a little bit afraid of what else you can do. We're moving right along then. Let's move on. With the number 15 pick, it's the mighty Miltanks coming back for another season here. It's Enamorous Incarnate with the first selection here for the Miltanks, followed up by Iron Boulder, Hydrapple, Vileplume, Araquanid, Darkrai, Raikou, Typhlosion, Hisui, Slowbro, Galar, Hitmonlee, and Cloyster. As funny as it is that Vileplume was picked 2 rounds before Darkrai on the very same team. Steve, what do you have to say about the stats and typings here?
Taking a look at the typing to start, the team has spammable weaknesses to Dragon, Fire, Flying, Ghost, Psychic, and Rock, as well as Ground being pretty reasonable into the team. Taking a look at the base stats, they are bottom 3 in terms of their HP, so we'll definitely need some means to kind of live a little longer here. Looking at their speed tiers, there's a gap between Hitmonlee's 87 down to Cloyster 70, as well as down from Cloyster 70 down to Vileplume's 50. Overall, though, the range of Darkrai's 125 to Slowbro Galar's 30 is pretty reasonable. Couple faster options, couple slower options. Definitely a team that can exploit Trick Room or work outside of it on either case. Michael, what do the moves look like?
Yeah, so they have lots of priority options, but not a lot of great ones outside of Hitmonlee and Cloyster. Their hazard game, they have Sticky Webs being nice, but Cloyster is really the only other setter of anything on the team. Then Rapid Spin Hitmonlee is removal, but not the best. Pretty terrible pivoting, though, with really just Volt Switch on Raikou. Knockoff and Taunt, they have 2 knockoff users, and not a lot of taunters, but some pretty good ones at least. For status, they have great status play with multiple options for all statuses, although some are definitely more available on their team than others. For boosting, Enamorous and Darkrai are definitely the best, but Typhlosion, Slowbro, Raikou, Hitmonlee, and Hydrapple are also pretty viable here. For speed control, they've got Sticky Web and lots of speed-dropping moves being nice, as well as access to Trick Room, but Enamorous is a pretty poor Tailwind user on the team here. No real redirection options that I see. Then for their partner support, they have double Pollen Puff, Heal Pulse, and Life Dew being very nice for helping sustain their partners. Then okay access to Helping Hand with 2 Wide Guard users is also pretty neat. As far as spread attacking go, that Enamorous and potentially that Typhlosion are probably the scariest options. Nate, what do you make of this team?
Scariest is probably the picture in the upper left. But aside from that, I think there is actually a lot to like about this team here. There are some really cool combos here with Sticky Web being able to help out a lot of those kind of higher speed mons there. Imagine Sticky Web with the Typhlosion trying to go off. Ooh, it's pretty nice there. As well as actually some nice Trick Room abusers here too on the exact opposite spectrum there. Slowbro Galler, really nice setter. Actually, I think relatively underrated there. And Hydrapple able to take advantage of that pretty well too. Though I do think that it's missing a couple of just key components. As you mentioned with Tailwind, Enamorous is, that's not really what you want to be using it for. Getting another really reliable Tailwind setter would have been quite nice. Maybe a couple better abusers than something like Hitmonlee or Cloister for doubles. Of course, the Vileplume pick kind of stands out there a little bit. Round 4, not really sure what it's trying to accomplish there. So there are some pieces here that actually do fit together pretty decently, but I'm not sure it amounts to one full continuous team here that can function together and have a ton of success. Although I think the pieces are already there, that one or two really good transactions or trades could actually fix up the team to be something really scary. Watch out potentially for some really funny options coming here from some really cool mons as well. Let's move along. With the number 16 pick, it's the Corviknight Clobbers, led by Brendan Megu. All right, and we're going to go with Sinistra as the first pick. You're really excited to see what this is going to do. Probably worthy of that first round pick. Wonder what he's going to make of it. Just pairing that up with the Roaring Moon, Arcanine, Thundurus is the other part of the Thundurus sandwich here. Gastrodon, Scizor, Berserker, Pheasantipity, Regidrago, Florges, and Brambleghast. A lot of really neat here mons here, Steve. It kind of looks like one of those draft teams where it's a bunch of UU mons that all fit together just really well. Just that reflect in these typings and stats.
Yeah, the typings here look fantastic, with Flying and Ghost being really the only spammable options into the team, and Fairy and Fire and Ice also looking good. Taking a look at their base stats, this team is top 3 in terms of the average attack, while being bottom 3 in terms of defense. Looking at the speed tiers, there are no gaps along the entire range of Roaring Moon's 119 to Gastrodon's 39. Overall, a fantastic range of speeds, good pairs of typings, reasonable stats. It looks like a fantastic team that with the right move pools could really go to town. What do the move pool for the team look like, Michael?
Yeah, so they have solid priority between E-Speed, Bullet Punch, Fake Out, and Shadow Sneak as options. For their hazard game, they have 2 Rockers and Spikers being pretty solid, and then Rapid Spin and Defog being great removal. Not a ton of pivoting, but some strong pivots from mons like Thundurus, Scizor, and the Roaring Moon. Knock Off and Taunt. They've got 4 good knockoff users, including Roaring Moon being very strong with that knockoff. An okay taunt access, but Prankster Taunt being fantastic from that Thundurus. For status, they have access to several statuses and good users, but limited on options for each. Their boosting mons, Roaring Moon, Thundurus, and Scizor are definitely the big ones, but watch out for Regidrago and then potentially even Florges and Sinistra doing some work. Their speed control is pretty good, with good access to both Tailwind and Trick Room, okay Electro Web and Icy Wind support as well for lowering some speeds. Redirection, they've got Rage Powder on that Sinistra. However, they do have excellent ability to heal partners. They've got Life Dew, Pollen Puff, and Hospitality on that Sinistra, again providing lots of healing for allies. Good helping hand users, and then Dragon Cheer on Roaring Moon and Regidrago definitely opens up some fun options for some crit builds. For spread attacking, Regidrago and Thundurus are probably the most likely threats, but Roaring Moon, Sinistra, and the Fairies all have good spread options. We'll just see what they actually pull out. What do you think of the team here, Nate?
Yeah, I do really like this team, actually. It seems a little bit of everything. My only concern is if it has enough of everything right now. I am a big fan, actually, of those archetypal draft teams that is just a bunch of very good, top of UU mons, but the stats aren't necessarily quite there all the time, right? I see a lot of potential with the team. I see a lot of different things it can do. It can function in just about any different environment, but I think you're just going to have to be a little creative to make sure that what you're doing gets ahead of anything that the opponent is going to do, because it seems a little bit spread out here. But I do really like the ceiling of this team and what you could potentially accomplish with this. It seems like it's just a lot of very good stuff thrown together here. See if it can function properly in the doubles environment. I think Sinistra goes a long way to help with that. See if the pressure is too much for the little teacup or not. Let's move right along. With the number 17 pick, making their debut in the main league as well after an undefeated season in the Beginners League, it's the Terrifier Heatwave, and they are going to start off with a powerful Iron Bundle. and then playing the villains their very first season, taking Amoonguss away from John, the Close Combat Club, Rip John. Following that up with the Arcanine Hisui, Spectrier, Iron Valiant, Mousehold, Deoxys Defense, Pawmot, Shiftry, Abomasnow, and Swampert. A lot of really cool, interesting pieces here, Steve. How do they fit together in terms of typing and stats?
So a lot of these monotype mons have some not very many resistances, which are making a lot of attack spamble into them, including Dragon, Fairy, Fire, Flying, Ghost, Ground, Ice, Psychic, and Steel. In addition to that, Bug Fighting and Grass are also good types to use into the team. Some of them really helped out by some quad weaknesses. Looking at the average base stats, there's nothing on the top or bottom three for this team. Overall, pretty reasonable with a lot of standouts on some particular stats from specific mods. Looking at the speed tiers, there are some gaps in the middle from Shiftry's 80 down to Abomasnow and Swampert 60, and then down from Abomasnow and Swampert down to Amoonguss's 30. Overall, a range of Iron Bundles 136 down to Amoonguss. Pretty reasonable range. Do have a lot of the higher speed mons as well as Amoonguss to kind of discourage the Trick Room mode. A little bit weak to Trick Room, I would say, with kind of Swampert and Abomasnow being the only slower mons in addition to Amoonguss. But Amoonguss is pretty big deterrent from anyone trying to pull that on you and just losing mons to sleep. Michael, what do the move pools look like?
Yeah, so they have pretty good offensive priority options, including double fake out and double feint to boot, giving them pretty solid priority there. Their hazard game, Swampert is a solid rocker, and Deoxys has plenty of hazards, but other setters are pretty subpar. Tidy Up and Defog are good enough removal for them, though. Some decent pivot options, really, I could say about 4 of them, is okay, but not particularly impressive. They do have several good knockoff users and fast taunters, though, giving them the edge in disruption. Lots of status options from lots of mons, but probably not all of them would be great users of them, so we'll have to see how that actually plays out throughout the season. For boosting, Spectrier, Iron Valiant, Mousehold, and Pawmot definitely stand out, but there are some other potential sweepers here, too. Speed control, really only one Tailwind and great Trick Room user, but lots of good options for speed reduction. For redirection, they do have Rage Powder and Follow Me, providing some nice redirection. Then they've got Pollen Puff for healing, lots of Helping Hand users with 2 Wide Guard users, but a lot of them are already offensive mons that might not really be running those moves. For spread attacking, definitely Iron Bundle and Abomasnow's Blizzards in Snow could hurt, and Iron Valiant also has potentially a very strong Dazzling Gleam. What about this team, Nate? What do you think?
Yeah, I see a lot of, again, very strong individual pieces. Offensively, the Iron Bundle, Spectre, Iron Valiant, wow, those powerful. And even defensive and supportive-wise, the Amoonguss, the Mousehold, Arcanine Hisui, which can also be very strong offensive. While those are great support pieces, it seems like a very natural fit to just kind of put them together and go to town. So I wonder how straightforward and simple it will be to see that coming and do something about it. These pieces, again, work together quite well, but that's very easy to see coming. We'll see what kind of trickery the Terrifier Heatwave may have to get up to here in the main league that they weren't able to get away with in the Beginners League in order to deceive their opponents on what they're doing. See a couple of really cool ideas here. Forming the Abomasnow I really like as a cool pick to help that out quite a bit. The Shiftry, actually, has a lot of cool little options here and there too. You can get that trickery going and then settle into your already powerful strategies. I see a lot of success, actually, for the Terrifier Heatwave. We've got one pick left. Let's get to it. And with the 18th and final pick in the Season 14 draft for the Wooper Club League, we have another returning coach. It's the Summit County Psyducks, led by Zach, originally picking Walking Wake here, and now post-trade is the Chen Pao to pair up with Whimsicott, Entei, Farigiraf, Garchomp, Zapdos, Jirachi, Azumarill, Okidogi, Blastoise, and Orthworm. It seems like another pretty powerful team from another experienced doubles user, Steve. What do we see as far as stats and typings?
The typing here are looking pretty good. Electric, Ghost, and Ground are really the only spammable options, with some other key weaknesses to Fighting, Fire, and Ice. Taking a look at the base stats, the team is top 3 in terms of HP, having lots of that to go around. In terms of the speed tiers, there is a gap at the top end between Chien Pao's 135 to Whimsicott's 116, as well as in the middle from Entei, Zapdos, and Jirachi's base 100 down to Okidogi's base 80. Overall range from Chien Pao down to Azumarill's 50 is pretty reasonable. Lots of mons and that higher speed tier while having a couple of slower ones to kind of discourage Trick Room. Gives this team lots of options. with the Tailwind support can really outpace other teams in Tailwind, although they are missing kind of that 100 to 80 speed tier, which may prevent some opponents from putting full speed investment on their Mons. Michael, what do the move pools look like?
Yeah, so they've got several priority options, and then the Chien Pao, E-Speed, and of course Azumarill's Aquajet definitely being standouts there. For their hazards, a good rock and spike setting, however their only removal is Blastoise. For pivots, they have 4 really good pivots, and of course Shedtail on Orthworm, definitely not to be overlooked. Only 2 knockoff users, though, and no stab options there, and then only 3 taunters, but 1 is Whimsicott. Good access to Paralysis, but middling at best access to other statuses. Garchomp and Chien Pao are definitely the most straightforward as far as potentially boosting up and sweeping. However, Jirachi, Farigiraf, Okidogi, and Blastoise could all have some time to shine in that department. For speed control, double Tailwind, including Prankster, double Trick Room, okay but not great access to speed-reducing moves, gives them really nice speed play overall. For redirection, they only have Ally Switch on Farigiraf, but I think that'll be pretty decent for them. Partner support, they have double Life Dew for healing, and then several great helping hand users, pretty nice. Spread attacks, no crazy spread options that I see out of the gate besides, of course, Garchomp's Earthquake, but mons like Blastoise, Farigiraf, and Whimsicott definitely have decent options that could become very nice after a boost or 2. What do you think about this last team, Nate?
I must be a broken record. Every single time I see one of Zach's draft, I love so much about it. I'm a big fan of Whimsicott here, drafted first pick in the second round, which is really neat here, and able to support its teammates very well, along with Zapdos being able to get up those tailwinds as well. I really love the middle part of this draft the most, I think. The Farigiraf in round 4, I know that was looked at by a lot of teams, and it feels like more so than a Trick Room mode, this feels more like deterrence to Trick Room to go along with a couple of Tailwind users, and I really like everything that can provide there too, as well as Armor Tail to prevent priority from coming in. The Zapdos and Jirachi feel like very good value picks in the middle there too. You mentioned a lot of Jirachi's support options. Can't believe it fell this far for a Steel type, and as well as look at what Azumarill has offensively. Okidogi and Blastoise, amazing support. Take a look at all the things that Garchomp can do. It's still very good mon. This is actually one of my favorite drafts in here as well. Again, broken record every time Zach drafts. I love everything about it. There are very few weaknesses, I think, to pick apart. Wonder if there is enough firepower on here potentially, but something like Chien Pao really helps out in that department. So I think this is pretty darn well constructed. Next, let's go into a few thoughts we have about the draft overall. But first, I suppose we should talk about the Week 1 schedule coming out here. We got to see who's going up against who in Week 1. There are some juicy matchups to talk about here, Steve. What stands out to you?
I'm definitely going to have to pick here the Buffalo Buffalant going up against the Waterdeep Waba Fett. A finals preview, or I guess rematch. We'll see about preview. But yeah, a repeat of the finals from last season, starting off here in Week 1. Going to be an explosive match. Nate and I are, of course, both more singles players. So really excited to see which of us integrates into doubles by Week 1 here to pick up this win. What about you, Michael?
Yeah, so I'm definitely looking at the Close Combat Club versus the Calgary Corviknight, the battle of teams that start with C's. I think it's just going to be a really interesting kind of test for the season. We have the Close Combat Club, who took some time off, coming back, going up against kind of one of the rising stars in the Calgary Corviknight, having proven themselves very competent. But we're going to see, some of that is, that VGC experience that the Close Combat Club going to really help them. We're going to try and start seeing, how do we suss out, kind of how much of a difference that difference in experience makes, or the Calgary Corviknight going to, continue their strong performance in the league so far. Nate, what stands out to you here?
Yeah, there's still quite a few to talk about, but I have to point out the Incineroar and the Psyducks, two good friends who have prepped with each other in the past, not for singles, but for VGC. These are two coaches I think that overall have the most experience together in the one single matchup in VGC. What are the differences between VGC and doubles? How does that relate with their prep in VGC? So interested to see how they work everything out, if they're able to catch each other off guard, if they're going to be more used to, say, a best 2 out of 3 format compared to just a single 1 game. There are a lot of interesting things around here that this could be another potential bellmark of what we're going to expect for the rest of the season. Could be really fun. With that, we've gone over the entire draft as well as a preview of week one. Steve, why don't you give us some closing thoughts on the matter here? What are some of the things that you're looking forward to seeing from this season, and what do you think we can expect to happen here? Go ahead.
Yeah, very excited for the season. I'm going to give the same answer I gave in our Season 9 recap. I once again think field effects are really going to dominate. In Season 9, multi-battles, we were a little unsure because you were relying on a field effect helping your team, which you controlled, and your partner's team, which you did not control. But here, it's a little bit different where you are in control of your whole team, and I think the field effects are going to be even more impactful because of it. As we went through, we went over some very clear weather-based teams, lots of teams that can and prefer Trick Room or would definitely not want to get Trick Room up. Various teams that are based around specific terrain. There are all sorts of options here, and it's going to be exciting to see how these different field conditions interact with each other and which one will win out in this format. What are your thoughts, Michael?
Yeah, so I think I'm just interested in how the whole doubles aspect is going to progress. I kind of, when highlighting my match, I brought it up, how much is that VGC experience going to mean? How quickly are the singles coaches going to adapt or not adapt? And then also just, kind of, we went over in the different teams we were looking at. Some of them, have good mons, but not necessarily like a great overall game plan that we were able to figure out. And, is that going to change? It could be, I think, that we end up, at the end of the season, we have 4, maybe 5 teams that are really cohesive, really kind of doubles focused with stuff like weather, the psychic terrain, of course. And, we might then just have the next best teams just being really good mons that just have good play and aren't necessarily, super doubles oriented specifically. So I'm interested to see kind of how all of that shakes out. Nate, what are you looking forward to most this season?
Yeah, it is maybe a bit of a generic answer, but I am so looking forward to all the new stuff we get. Not just from one DLC, we get 2 to go back to. I'm looking at the Loyal Trio, the Monkey Dory Pheasant video, Okidogi, all being picked up. All the Ogre Pond forms as well is really cool. Got the Archalodon, the Hydrapple, and even a couple other things that we're letting back in. Right, I'm able to use Shaman Sky. We see Darkrai being picked up. What kinds of effects are these going to have? Is this a little bit of a testing ground for how good they're going to be moving forward? Are we going to allow something like Darkrai in the future, for example, as well? Is something like Okidogi going to shine and be something that we really want to go pick up? A lot of new stuff, a lot of really interesting stuff, and the way that everything has come out recently, it really feels like everything is so good and elite. It makes me so excited to try out everything. We only have 11 mons to work with at a time. That's going to wrap it up for our Season 14 draft recap. Thanks again to Steve and Michael for joining us along the way here. Hopefully, it didn't take up too much of your time, but we're glad that you stuck around throughout the entire thing to preview the season ahead. We're looking forward to a double season. Hope you are too. We'll see you for the Week 1 recap right here on the Wooper Club channel. Thank you.